morning, dear student friends. I am Dr. Godbole Mahendra Tukaram, welcoming you all in my today's super lecture, which is based on the unit 5th of the CBSE course Biology, and which deals with the study of the human physiology. To deal with the human physiology, we have to study about the 6 chapters, and those 6 chapters we will discuss sequentially one by one in my individual super lecture. In my today's super lecture, I am going to highlighting on the endocrinology and the synthesis of the hormones and disorders, various kinds of the diseases, how those are associated by means of the imbalancing of the hormonal secretions, especially the goiter as well as the different kinds of the dwarfism as well as the gigantism that I am going to discuss in it. Those are associated with the high secretion of the growth hormones. So what are the scope of my today's lecture? My scope of the today's lecture is not only to crack the Indian government's NEET undergraduate examination for the MBBS students and the BDS students, as well as the Ayush, that is Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani Siddha and the Homeopathy, which is supposed to be conducted by the Government of India, but also my lecture will also facilitate how to crack the international examinations from the various nations. For example, the foreign countries, take an example. This lecture will also facilitate to, that is FMGE examination, that is a foreign medical and the graduate examinations. To key licensing the foreign's, the foreign medical interest examination, for example the USMLE, that is USA's examination, and the P-Lab, that is the United Kingdom's examinations, as well as the AMAC and the YUMCAT, as well as the IMAT examination, that is the medical college entrance examinations and the international medical examinations or the assessment test. Now, what is the scheme of my today's presentation? My today's presentation scheme is to discuss about the part of the human physiology in which we are going to study or introducing few chapters. Chapter number 14, that is a breathing and exchange of the gases, followed by the chapter number 15, that is body fluids and circulations. Later on, we will discuss about the composition of the blood and the role of the heart, as well as the erythrocyte and other all blood composition we will discuss in the chapter number 15. Chapter number 16 will deals with the different kinds of the physiological activities. In chapter number 17 we will talk about the locomotion and the movement in human being, and we will also cover the small scale organisms, those may be the unicellular organisms. Chapter number 18 will deals with the neural control and the coordination. Chapter number 19 is chemical coordination and integration. In today's lecture, we are going to target this unit, this chapter from the unit 5th, that is chemical coordination and integration. Here, the combination of the two words you will see, there is a coordination, chemical and integration. Integration has been maintained by the coordinative work of the chemical signalings, or the neurons is playing an important role. Therefore, there are the certain chemicals and the electrical signals which are supposed to be passed by means of the human brain in the form of the cations anions through the ductless glands. Now we are going to discussing about where those ductless glands are situated and how the hormones are supposed to be classified. As a classical definition of the hormone we will discuss, along with how the current sciences has also been described or defined the hormones. Hormones are defined by the classical, under the classical definition, hormones are supposed to be, those are the chemicals and which are secreted in trace amounts from a ductless glands. The glands are quickly sending the messages through the cations and anions, and therefore we can call it as a ductless glands. Those are the byproducts of the endocrine glands, and therefore those are very trace in a concentrations. And how the current sciences has defined the hormones. The current sciences has defined the hormones as those are supposed to be the chemical messengers. Through the hormones, there are certain kinds of the messages are supposed to be sent to the distantly located organ. Therefore, those are the intercellular messengers and are produced in a trace amount. If those are imbalanced, if their concentration is hyper, then different kinds of the diseases will be invited. For example, the goiter as well as the dwarfism and gigantism, which means that either the height will be depressed or the height will be stunted. The growth of the human baby may be stunted, as well as in gigantism, the body weight will tremendously increase and an activity of the human beings will be suppressed. So, while talking about these hormones, where the hormones are supposed to be synthesized, hormones can be synthesized either the cells or the tissues or the individual glands. But certain hormones are supposed to be synthesized as well as coordinatively regulated by means of a certain glands, and that gland is supposed to be a master gland, and this is supposed to be the pituitary gland. Here it is a pituitary gland. We will discuss later on in detail, but first of all we will talk about the human brain. Now we know the human brain is supposed to be divided into the three parts: the forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. Cerebellum as well as the cerebral and the cerebellums, those are the important part of the brain. And in the midbrain we can call it as the important center, where the hypothalamus is here, and the hypothalamus is rightly secreting the two types of the hormones. Those are the vasopressin and the oxytocin hormones, which are directly synthesized by the human hypothalamic nuclei. The cells of the hypothalamic nuclei is going to synthesizing the two important hormones, and those are directly reaches to the posterior portion of the pituitary gland that we will discuss later on. And the pineal gland, another gland, is a very small gland, and which is a pineal gland. It is also going to monitoring and acting on the diurnal variations, the day and night awakening. It can be controlled by those pineal glands. Now there are other glands which can control the thyroxine. Thyroxine is also an important hormone, and that is in parathyroid glands is secreting different kinds of the hormones. Estrogen and progesterones, and prolactin and oxytocin, that is the oxytocin is very important hormones, is also secreted by the human female. Now we are going to talking about the chapter number 19th portion as a human physiology, in which the human pituitary gland is a master gland, and human pituitary gland is divided into two regions. These are the two regions. So these two regions are supposed to be divided on the basis of the style or the way of the synthesizing and the reaching of the hormones from the hypothalamus to this pituitary gland. And some hormones are supposed to be reaching to this posterior region of the pituitary gland. Here is a posterior, there are the two lobes, and the two lobes are attached to the human hypothalamus by the stalk. And these two lobes, one is an anterior portion of the pituitary gland and another one is a posterior region of the pituitary gland. This anterior region of the pituitary gland is divided into two regions. One is the pars intermedia and pars distalis. The pars distalis is secreting more hormones, but the pars intermedia is going to synthesizing only one hormone, and that hormone is also important, which is going to deciding the color of the human skin. That is, the pigmentation has been regulated by the hormone melanin, which is going to synthesized by the lowermost portion of the anterior part of the pituitary gland. That is the pars intermedia and pars that is the distalis. The pars distalis is secreting the 6 type of the hormones. But in case of the human being, the pars distalis, this is a pars distalis, and this is a pars, we can call it as a lower region, as a pars intermedia. both the part of the anterior region of the pituitary gland as a pars distalis and pars intermedia, those are merged in each other. There is not too much separation is identified in the human pituitary gland, especially. Now coming to the next portion of the pars distalis. Pars distalis is going to synthesizing, this is a pars distalis we can call, that is the pars distalis is a one part, and pars intermedia is only secreting melanin hormone. It is going to deciding the color of the human skin, whereas a pars distalis is secreting or synthesizing the 6 type of the hormones. Those are the growth hormones, prolactins. Those hormones are supposed to be the anterior region is going to synthesizing. Now the prolactin is also denoted as a PRL. Then that is the thyroid gland is also secreting the different types of the hormone, that is a parathyroid and the that is a hypothyroid and the hyperthyroidisms. That if the hormone secretion is too much, then it creates the the body weight will also increase in both the cases in male and female, and especially if the hyperthyroidism is reported in a human females, it negatively hamper on the cyclic phenomena of the menstrual cycles. It can also cause the menstrual cycle, means it may affect on the reproductive side of the human female. Now while talking about the list that remaining hormones, those are supposed to be the that is adrenocorticoid hormones, and those are also important. Then luteinizing hormones, LH is denoted by in the short form, that is a LH hormone. That luteinizing hormones and FSH hormone. The luteinizing hormones and FSH hormones are existing in both the cases. Let us see in this figure. I have been tried to draw both the characters in the same figure. So here in the human female, those characters are supposed to be shown. Let us take an example, the LH, that is a luteinizing hormones in a human male. That luteinizing hormone is going to controlling on the androgens. The pubic hairs may be grown on the genital organs. Then male testes can also start or initiate the synthesis of the formation of the sperms from insertile cells under the meiotic divisions. There are the 2 types of the cell division. Some of the somatic cells we can call it as the that is a mitosis, where the cells number is only increasing, but those cells we can call it as the meiotic cell, in which the sperms are supposed to be formed. Now while talking about the other important characters of those glands which are rightly synthesized from the adrenohypophysis, and that adrenohypophysis is also introducing or controlling on the glucocorticoids and the other hormones. Let us take an example of the adrenaline. The adrenaline is a hormone which is going to synthesized by the anterior portion of a pair of the human kidney. Both the cases in male and female, the anterior portion of the kidney is synthesizing the different kinds of the hormones. Here we will find out the mineralocorticoids is also important. The minerals will be synthesized, and the fight or the flight mode can also be started by means of, if there is some fear in our mind, and at the point of time of any fear, we may have a quick action either to fight or flight. That is possible by means of the anterior regions, secretions of the hormones by the kidney, that is in adrenaline gland. Then another 2 types of the hormonal centers or the hormones can be secreted by the genital organs from the male and female. That is the LH and in FSH. FSH is also important hormone. Let us take the role of the LH in the human female. The LH or the luteinizing hormones induces the ovulation. During the formation of the eggs, the initial process we can call it as a ovulation in human female, that follicles maybe the Graafian follicles will develop and it can be maintained the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is also important. This is a corpus luteum. And what is corpus luteum? It is a remnant of the Graafian follicle. It is plays an important role for often the formation of the ovules. And then we can also talk about the human female hormones. Those are LH and FSH. Along with those hormones, the progesterones and the estrogen is also important along with the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is supposed to be a temporary hormone. After the 14th day of the menstrual cycles, the synthesis of this progesterone and estrogens may be paused. Why it can be paused and what is its function? Its function is to implement, it is an implantation, because what happens, let us take an example, this is a human female ovary. Here the zygote will take place, and after the fusion of the male and female, that is in sperms and the ovaries, eggs, then the systematic development of the embryo will be takes place. And where is the site the embryonic development will be takes place? It can rightly takes place only in the uterus. This estrogen, especially the progesterone and estrogen, and we can also call it as in the corpus luteum, it will help for the implantation of the embryo to the uterine wall through the umbilical cord. Umbilical cord will play an important role to access all the nutrients from the human females. So the babies may, or the that is in fetus, human fetus can access all the nutrients from the mother, from the, that is we can call it as the umbilical cord. And for biotechnology, that umbilical cord is supposed to be very important to access those primordial cells or those unspecialized cells, and those unspecialized cells can be developed under controlled conditions to synthesize a desirable organ. Means that umbilical cord is very important for it act as the in the medical science, especially in a biotechnology, that umbilical cord is very important, and the fluid from the umbilical cord is very important for the synthesizing the new organ. While talking about the next portion of the pituitary gland as a posterior pituitary gland, this portion is supposed to be controlled by the neurohypophysis. Here the adrenohypophysis, the 6 types of the hormones are supposed to be accessed by the anterior portion of the pituitary gland, and those portions is supposed to be controlled under the portal system. Portal systems means what? There are certain capillaries which are going to existing in the anterior part of this pituitary gland, and the hormones will be accessed or the hormones will be regulated through these portal systems, means by means of a small capillaries or the small venules. It is only as and when it is required, these portal systems can play an important role to give or to mobilize the hormones systematically. But here in the posterior region of the pituitary gland, the hormones can be thrown or the hormones can be supplied by means of the neurons. Neurons is made by the dendrons and axon as well as the other cell body. The axons is a, we can call it as that is in the end or the terminals of the axon, and that axons is going to synthesizing the hormones to the posterior region of the kidney, and which kind of the hormones are supposed to be synthesized or reaches to the posterior portion. This is a posterior portion of the pituitary gland. Here only the oxytocin and the vasopressin, those hormones are important, and those are directly reaches to the posterior region. So what are the application of the oxytocin? Naturally, the oxytocin is playing a very important role for the birth of the baby. So how it is going to act on the uterus? The vigorous contraction can be done by means of that highly movement or the vigorous contraction, and expansions can be done by this kind of the hormone, that is an oxytocin. But if the hormones is inadequate, it is not enough naturally, then those are not processing properly. In certain cases, the practitioners or the doctors may recommend the artificially synthesized oxytocin, and that is the brand we can talk it as an pitocin. That is an intracellular injection can be given to the mother for the smooth or the proper pregnancy. So this is for the proper delivery of the human female. Now the vasopressin is another important hormone. It is associated with the posterior region. That is also going to controlling the loss of the water. And coming to the other important hormones, those hormones are supposed to be the pancreas. But pancreas is supposed to be important organ of the human. Both the cases male and female, that pancreas is existing, and it is going to controlling the synthesis of that is insulin. Insulin is going to controlling on the regulation of the maintenance of the sugar level in the human blood. But in case of the imbalancing of the pancreatic juice circulations or the synthesis, then artificial pancreas or the artificial glucose has to be given to the humans, or we can call it as the artificially or genetically synthesized, that is the pancreatic juice is also possible. Now we are talking about the human endocrine system, especially how many glands are supposed to be existing in the human being. Those are the 8 different types of the glands which are going to monitoring and secreting the hormones, and those are the sites we can call it as a pituitary, as a master gland. Pineal gland is also important, which is going to controlling all the diurnal variation, day and night awakening. Thyroid gland is also important, which is going to found in the throat of the human beings. Adrenal glands on the anterior portion of the human kidney, that is adrenal glands. And the pancreatic juice or the pancreas is here, and then parathyroid, thymus, and gonads. Gonads is a collectively terminology. Collective word has been adopted by the medical sciences to talk about the testes and the ovaries, or to talk about the Sertoli cells, or the process of the formation of we can call it as in testosterone, or the spermatogenesis, as well as the ovulation from the ovaries, that is the gonads. That is an LH and an FSH hormone is a very important role. So this was in detailed about the endocrinology, or the branch of the biology which deals with the certain of the hormones and the disorders, the different kinds of the disorders.